Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Bobby Valentine Sports Show. I'm your host, Frank Rampin. Week 7 is in the books. That's just about a little bit under halfway through the NFL season, and a lot of storylines throughout this week, a lot of close games, comeback wins, and a lot of interesting teams either taking the win or the loss this week. So let's dive right into it with the weekly recap and the stat of the week. Got a couple of them for you this week. And mentioned it, a lot of comeback wins this weekend. 5 teams came back from a double-digit deficit this weekend, including Baltimore, Detroit, Buffalo, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville. Baltimore and Buffalo a little bit skewed there. Both teams went down 10-0 very, very early on, ended up winning very, very handedly. So those ones are a little bit weird, but nonetheless, comeback wins. Here is the stat of the week that I still don't understand how it's possible. So here we go. Daniel Jones has not thrown a touchdown pass at home at MetLife Stadium in 658 days. Daniel Jones became the first starting quarterback to throw 0 touchdowns in 6 straight home games since Trent Dilfer did it back in the 1995-96 season. And Jones's last home touchdown was thrown to Isaiah Hodgins on January 1st, 2023. The streak currently extends back before Jones signed his full-year $160 million contract. And since Jones signed this massive contract, he owns a 3-10 QB record and has just thrown 8 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Here are the players that have thrown more touchdown passes than Daniel Jones at MetLife Stadium since the start of last season. Keep in mind, Daniel Jones has 0. Zach Wilson, 6 touchdown passes. Rodgers, 4. Tyrod Taylor, 4 as well. Josh Allen, 3. Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, 2, along with Sam Darnold, also has 2. And then Jacoby Brissett, Pat Mahomes, Tim Boyle, Jordan Love, Trevor Siemian, Geno Smith, Marcus Mariota, Matthew Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Desmond Ridder, Bo Nix, all have 1, and Daniel Jones has 0. 77 players have scored a touchdown at MetLife Stadium since the last time Daniel Jones did. That is just unfathomable. What? He's getting paid $45 million a year, folks. $45 million a year, folks. Unreal. I'm just going to leave it at that. So from that ridiculous stat of the week to the play of the week, this was actually one of the first plays of the day on Sunday. So this was from the Battle of Ohio, Cleveland versus Cincinnati. Opening kickoff. Sent away by the Browns. Fielded just about at the goal line by Charlie Jones. Looking to get this Battle of Ohio underway. And he's got a seam. Busted right. He's got the kicker to beat, and he beats him at the 45, crossing into Cleveland, into Cincinnati territory. Breaking tackles, jumping down the sideline, and diving into the end zone. What a opening return from Charlie Jones. Gets this game started with a bang. What an unbelievable way to start this NFL Sunday. And as soon as you saw that, you knew football was upon us. Amazing return from Charlie Jones. Almost pushed out of bounds at the very end. Had to keep his balance. 2 guys shedding the tackle of 2 men. Just barely able to keep that right foot in and extend inside the goal line. Touchdown Bengals. So that was how this NFL Sunday started. And another game that was at 1 o'clock was the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. 2 at the top of the NFC North. Very, very good division, the best division in football so far. So both these teams fighting for a spot at the top of that. Coming into this game, the Vikings 5-0, and the Lions sitting at 5-1, looking to jump them in the standings. So we'll pick things up here with about 10 minutes and 45 seconds left in the third quarter. 21-10, Detroit on top. This game was wild. Started off 10-0 Minnesota, then flipped in favor of Detroit. They went right down the field. They scored a couple times. So 10:47 left on the clock. 3rd and 8 for Minnesota. 21-10 ball game. Darnold looking left to the end zone. Justin Jefferson got it. Touchdown Vikes. 21-17 after the touchdown from Justin Jefferson. And you see the trademark gritty right there. What a throw and catch from Darnold and Jefferson. So now we'll jump ahead. 5.5 minutes left here in the third. Goff over the middle to Khalif Raymond on 3rd and 6. He picks up the first down, and he's got nothing but green grass in front of him. Takes it in for the score, extending the Lions' lead to 28-17. 11-point lead for the Lions heading into the fourth quarter. So Minnesota's kicker, Will Reichert, actually makes 2 field goals, one at the end of the third, one at the beginning of the fourth, to make it 28-23. Detroit's still on top, but now it is just a 5-point deficit. So 5-point game, getting late in this ball game. Just about 6 minutes left to go here. 28-23. Second and 10 for the Lions, looking to bleed out some clock. David Montgomery gets the carry, but he loses the ball. Ivan Pace Jr. scoops it up, going the other way, and he's in for the scoop and score. Minnesota takes the lead, 29-28 off of the fumble from David Montgomery, picked up by Ivan Pace. What a turn of events. Great punch out there. Ball's loose. Montgomery can't find it. Pace does, and he's off to the races. What a play from the defense of Minnesota, putting them on top 29-28. So just over 5 minutes left to go in this game, and a huge momentum swing. So now Detroit's going to get the ball back with a chance to come back and win this thing. 2 minutes left to go. 2nd and 6 from their own 34-yard line. Toss to Jahmyr Gibbs. Makes a man miss in the hole. Makes another guy miss in the secondary. And just shy of midfield is Jahmyr Gibbs. What a shifty run that was. Gets the Lions drive going. Next play. First and 10. Throw into the flat to Gibbs this time. He's got room to run. He makes a man miss. Another first down for Detroit. Now, next play again. Goff fakes the handoffs to Gibbs this time, looking right. Fires one to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he picks up the first down. Huge play from Amon-Ra. Aggressive from the Lions, just like the Dan Campbell style we're used to seeing. So that sets up Jake Bates from 44 yards out with 20 seconds left to go, and he drills it. From XFL, UFL, whatever it's called, to drilling game winners in the NFL, Jake Bates brings the boom. So last gasp for the Vikings. Don't have a chance. Lateral play goes awry. Tackled in the field of play. So comeback win from Detroit. What a win that was. Wild game this was. Back and forth all day long. And the Lions come out on top. Take the top spot in the NFC North ahead of Minnesota. So a lot of movement this week in the standings, a lot of interesting games and fun matchups, so let's dive into that. Starting off with the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills, they beat Tennessee 34-10. Earlier this week, though, the headline news for Buffalo, Amari Cooper traded from Cleveland to Buffalo, and his first catch as a Bill was a touchdown. Josh Allen and the Bills' offense was just too much for this Titans team. Like I said, the Titans were up 10-0 early in this game, but that did not last very long. The Miami Dolphins fall to 2-4, losing to Indianapolis 16-10. But good news for Dolphins fans. Tua Tagovailoa looks like he's tracking to play next week. Met with the doctors, neurologists, and it looks like Tua is going to play next weekend. The New York Jets fall to 2-5, losing to Pittsburgh 37-15, on Sunday Night Football. Devontae Adams' debut with the Jets didn't go as well as planned. He only had 3 receptions for 30 yards, so take that, you bozo. That is his fewest receiving yards in a game with Aaron Rodgers since 2017. So, hey, maybe the grass isn't always greener, you bum. And the Patriots fall to 1-6, losing to Jacksonville 32-16 in London. This is the first 6-game losing streak for the Patriots since 1993. And that was before the Patriots were any good. That was like the old Patriots. Gerard Mayo called the team soft in his post-game presser. That's not what you want to be called as an NFL team. Over to the NFC East, the Washington Commanders improved to 5-2. They absolutely smacked the Carolina Panthers 40-7. They have a plus 66 point differential. That is the best in the NFL. But their star quarterback, second overall pick in the draft, Jaden Daniels, was hurt on the opening drive of the game. He's listed as week to week with a rib injury. Washington is hopeful that he can play next week, but didn't look so good. Big run early in the game, ran for about 45-50 yards, but he went down. It looked like there was something bothering him. He tried to run a couple more times, but something was wrong, came out of the game, and never returned. There is some speculation that he did get hurt last week against the Giants, or not against the Giants, or last week against the Ravens, in a hit to the ribs that he didn't come out of the game with, so maybe that is the case. The Philadelphia Eagles improved to 4-2, beating the New York Giants 28-3. And Saquon Barkley went off against his former squad. He had 176 rushing yards, which is the most rushing yards he's ever had in a game at MetLife Stadium. And it comes as a Philadelphia Eagle against the Giants, so that's brutal. And the second most ever by a player versus their former team. Saquon has 658 rushing yards on the season. That's the most in the 6 games with the Eagles in team history. And Jalen Hurts is now tied with LaShawn McCoy for third all-time in rushing touchdowns in Eagles history with 44. The Dallas Cowboys run a bye, so they stay at 3-3. They needed it really bad. The Giants, just talked about them. They fell to 2-5, losing to the Eagles 28-3. Talked about Daniel Jones. He has not thrown a touchdown pass in his home stadium of MetLife in 658 days. 77 different people have scored a touchdown in that span. That's hard to believe. Going over to the AFC North now, the Baltimore Ravens, another dominant victory, proving to 5-2. After starting 0-2, they've won 5 in a row. They beat Tampa Bay 41-31. A little bit closer of a game than it really was. Onside kick from Tampa Bay late made this more of a closer contest. Lamar Jackson went 17 for 22 passing for 281 yards and 5 touchdowns. This is Lamar's 5th game with 5 passing touchdowns. That's the most in the NFL since 2019. And it's his second 5-touchdown game on Monday Night Football, the most all time. Lamar now has 3 career games with 5 passing touchdowns and at least 50 rushing yards. He's got 20 passing touchdowns to 0 picks on Monday Night Football. And he's also 23-1 versus the NFC, including 3-0 versus the Buccaneers. Lamar Jackson set a record for the most consecutive passing touchdowns without a pick on Monday Night Football. 20 touchdowns from 2019 to present, breaking the record of Rodgers, who did 17 from 2011 to 2019. Lamar Jackson has the best winning percentage by any quarterback since 1970 in prime time, with a minimum of 15 starts. He's 18-5. Derrick Henry also dominant again on the ground. The Ravens have been such a good rushing team throughout this 7 weeks of the NFL season. Derrick Henry, 15 carries for 169 yards and a receiving touchdown. Third time this season that Derrick Henry had 150 yards rushing. That ties the Baltimore single-season record, and it is only week 7. Derrick Henry has 2 carries this season of 80 yards before being touched this year. The rest of the NFL has a whopping 0. Henry has 873 rushing yards on the season. That passes Eric Dickerson back in 1983 for the most ever in the first 7 games with a franchise. And King Henry, 850 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns through 7 games. For the second time in his unbelievable career, he did it also in 2021 with Tennessee. The Ravens are the 5th team in NFL history with 150 rushing yards in each of their first 7 games, and in every one of these 7 games, they've outrushed their opponent by at least 100 yards. Mark Andrews caught touchdown pass number 42 of his career, passing Todd Heap for the most in Ravens history. And the Ravens 10-2 on the road since the start of last season, the best in the NFL. And under Jim Harbaugh, 41-18 in prime time. That's pretty good. Going over to Pittsburgh, the Steelers also 5-2. They beat the Jets 37-15 on Sunday Night Football. Russell Wilson made his debut for the Steelers. Went 16 for 29, 264 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 rushing. Game started slow. About 6 plays into his tenure as a Pittsburgh Steeler, he was getting booed by the fans, but picked things up. The Steelers, they were down at halftime, but they scored 13 points. That's the most in a first half they scored all season long. Then they scored 31 unanswered points. They were trailing 15-6, 31 unanswered points. It finished with a season high of 37. 20 consecutive games with a passing touchdown for Russell Wilson is the longest active streak in the NFL. Russ is also the first Steelers quarterback since 1950 to lead the team to 30 or more points in his starting debut. 264 passing yards by Russ is the most by a player in their first game with the Steelers. And the last time the Steelers scored 35 points and gained 400 yards of offense was week 10 of the 2018 season. So maybe Russ did make a difference. And the Steelers have allowed fewer than 20 points in all 5 of their wins this year. So bold move from Mike Tomlin to sit Justin Fields and play Russell Wilson in this game. And he said in his post-game presser, that's why he makes the big buy. That's why they compensate me well. What a legendary quote from Mike Tomlin. And I mean, hey, can you really doubt this guy now? I guess not. The Bengals slowly creeping up on there, starting to get themselves back into the playoff race. 3-4, beat Cleveland 21-14, a little bit closer than they would have liked, I would say. But do beat the Browns in the Battle of Ohio. Speaking of the Browns, they fall to 1-6. They lose to Cincinnati, and Deshaun Watson ruptured his Achilles. Tough blow for Deshaun Watson. He had been playing terribly, but you never want to see a guy go down with an injury like that. Achilles, one of the worst ones you could get. And, I mean, the crowd cheered as that happened. It was pretty messed up. As much as you don't like the guy, as much as badly he's been performing, he's still a human being, and he just tore his Achilles. So, Deshaun Watson, hopefully he's able to recover, but, I mean, it is maybe some karma. The NFC North now, the Detroit Lions, like I mentioned, beat Minnesota in our game of the week to improve to 5-1, go atop the division. They defeat Minnesota 31-29. Detroit has scored 120 points in their last 3 games. That's the most in a 3-game span for Detroit since 1997. Their first win versus a team 5-0 or better since 1974. And Jared Goff has been unbelievable. Jared Goff should probably be an MVP candidate right now. He has an 83.5 completion percentage in his last 4 games. That breaks the NFL record for the highest completion percentage over any 4-game span in NFL history. Breaks the record that was set by Jaden Daniels earlier this season. Goff was 12 for 12 in the first half. Third time this season he was perfect in a half. He's the only quarterback with a perfect completion percentage in any half this season, and he's done it 3 times. Unbelievable. There have been 2 instances of a quarterback throwing for over 1,000 yards while completing over 80% of his passes in a 4-game stretch. Jared Goff these last 4 games, and Peyton Manning during his 2008 NFL MVP campaign. And Goff has 1,086 yards and an 83.5% completion percentage in those last 4 games. Goff's got 14 completions against the blitz last week, which is the most in the NFL, but one blemish on this Detroit team right now. Mentioned it last week with the one blemish being the injury to Aiden Hutchinson, the devastating injury that was. But now, another weapon on offense, not a weapon this time on offense, Jamison Williams getting a 2-game ban for PEDs. So tough blow there. And Minnesota falls to Detroit, like I mentioned, 31-29. Wild back and forth game, but Minnesota falls from first to second in the NFC North. The Green Bay Packers beat Houston 24-22 on a game-winning field goal by Brandon McManus. They signed Brandon McManus on Wednesday after all of his off-the-field troubles, all that allegation stuff. Finally gets back in the NFL, signed on Wednesday. He makes the game-winning field goal for the Packers on Sunday, and he's doing Lambeau leaps. So a great week for Brandon McManus as they win a wild one at Lambeau versus Houston. And the Bears, they're 4-2. They have a bye, but whenever you don't play a game in the NFC North, it's basically a loss for you because everyone else in the division is going to win. AFC South now, that's Houston Texans. They fall to 5-2, losing to Green Bay 24-22 in the worst game of C.J. Stroud's career. C.J. Stroud completed only 10 of 21 for 86 yards. No touchdowns, no picks. Probably the worst game of his career so far. Probably might be the worst of his career going forward. But this offense has not been the same since the injury to Nico Collins. Nico Collins caught a bomb touchdown but got hurt actually on the play. And ever since that play, the offense has taken a steep downhill turn. Weird lack of fluidity. So the Colts gaining ground on this Texans team, improved to 4-3 after they beat Miami 16-10. And now, next week, Texans play the Colts, and if the Colts win, the Colts are in first place. Wild. Anthony Richardson returned for the Colts this weekend, and Anthony Richardson might be the hardest player to read in the NFL. Such a weird player. He'll make an amazing play where he runs on the sideline and trucks a DB, and then the next play, he drops a snap, turns it over. It's so weird. And I kind of thought the same thing when he was coming out of college. He obviously went to Florida, super young guy. He didn't really play much college football. He was really young. He was super hyped up, but then he played a couple of games and got hurt. He got drafted 5th overall. So he really hasn't played too much football just in general. I believe he's only started 23 games, including high school and college. So that's not a lot at all. I guess you're going to have time for him to grow, but so far it's been really weird. He's got the talent. He has all the legs, all the arm talent you could possibly want, but he just makes a boneheaded play every once in a while, and you're just left scratching your head. So the Colts, like I said, big opportunity this weekend against Houston to get atop this AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars improved to 2-5 after they beat New England 32-16 in London. Parker Washington returned a punt for 96 yards to the house, the longest punt return touchdown in Jacksonville history, and it's the first special teams touchdown on an international soil. There have been 54 international games with a total of 268 touchdowns scored, and that's the first special teams score ever. The Tennessee Titans lost to Buffalo 34-10, go to 1-5, but the big story coming out of Tennessee was that Mason Rudolph started this game instead of Will Levis. So Will Levis has those Mayo commercials, so Mayo, figure out your quarterback play. I don't really know, man. NFC South now, the Atlanta Falcons lose to Seattle, but they still hold the top spot in this division at 4-3. The offense has been stagnant for a little bit of weird times during the season. They had a solid start in this game. Younghoe Koo missed a field goal, and kind of everything sputtered from there. Kirk Cousins had a strip sack that was returned to the house. Just not ideal play for the Falcons. Same thing here with the Buccaneers. Last night they lose to Baltimore 41-31 on Monday Night Football. But man, this was a bigger loss than just the game. Mike Evans, first drive of the game, caught touchdown pass number 100. 100th career receiving touchdown for Mike Evans, the 11th player ever to get to 100 plus touchdowns. 5th player ever to get to 100 in their first 11 season, and he's the 5th fastest. Mike Evans, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison, T.O., and Jerry Rice, all those guys are on both these lists. But the big story in this game, early in this game, second drive of the game, maybe it was the third for Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield looking for Mike Evans in the end zone again, but he's unable to come up with the catch, and he hurt his hamstring. He had an hamstring problem last week, decided to play, didn't have an injury designation, but re-aggravated it. You could tell he was in a lot of pain, came out of the game and did not return. Later in the game, and that's a huge loss, obviously, because Mike Evans caught his 100th career touchdown. Only 11 players ever have done that. He's also tied for the NFL lead with 6 receiving touchdowns. But then later in the game, with less than a minute left, Chris Godwin suffered a horrible broken leg, broken ankle, terrible, and he leads the NFL in receptions this year with 50. So Baker loses his top 2 targets, unbelievable, and everything went downhill after that. Baker, when targeting players besides Mike Evans in this game, interceptions this season before Monday, he had 2. Interceptions on Monday after Mike Evans went down, 2. So he matched his season total in just about 2.5 quarters of football after his number 1 receiver goes down. To round out this bottom of the NFC South, the Saints 2-5, losing to Denver 33-10 on Thursday Night Football. Very bad game. They've lost 5 in a row now after starting 2-0. Brutal game for Spencer Rattler. And then the 1-6 Panthers lost to Washington 40-7. Not a very good team, but they are good when they play the Raiders. And heading out west to the AFC to start things out, the only remaining undefeated team in football, the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the San Francisco 49ers in a Super Bowl rematch, 28-18. The Chiefs are the second team to start 6-0 after winning 2 straight Super Bowls, joining the 1990 49ers, the team they beat, ironically. And they're the 4th reigning Super Bowl champion to be the last undefeated team. The last one to do that was the 2011 Packers, who started 13-0. So ways to go for Mahomes and the Chiefs, but man, 6-0, plus 43-point margin, the 4th lowest by a 6-0 team in NFL history. They've they've allowed 20 or fewer in 5 of 6 games this season. They forced 3 picks from Brock Purdy, and they held San Francisco to 2 of 11 on third down. But Mahomes has not looked very good this season. He's got only 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He's the 6th quarterback since 1950 and the 1st since 2015 to start 6-0 while having more interceptions than passing touchdowns. The Broncos jump ahead of the Chargers, beat New Orleans 33-10 on Thursday Night Football, improving to 4-3. Beat the hell out of the Saints on Thursday night. Sean Payton returns and thrives in his return to New Orleans. The Los Angeles Chargers lose to the Arizona Cardinals 17-15 on Monday Night Football. Game-winning field goal by Chad Ryland. Jim Harbaugh suffers his first career loss on Monday Night Football. Falls now to 6-1 all-time. Justin Herbert he went 27 for 39 and threw for 349 yards, but the offense didn't score a touchdown. They didn't score any touchdowns. 5 field goals. They've only scored 2 offensive touchdowns this year in their 3 losses. They had 2 turnovers from weeks 1 to 6, and they had 2 on Monday Night Football against the Cardinals. And the most losses by 3 points or fewer in the last 3 seasons, you'd guessed it, the Chargers are at top, 11 losses in the last 3 seasons by 3 or less. Behind them, the Broncos and the Titans both tied with 8. And to round things off, my Raiders losing again, 2-5 now, lost 20-15 to the Los Angeles Rams. The Raiders are a horrible team. Gardner Minshew's terrible. We did just sign Desmond Ridder, so maybe he can also be terrible, but it's okay. Brock Bowers, though, not terrible. He now has the most receptions ever by a tight end through their first 7 career games, breaking the Keith Jackson's record from 1998. He's also ahead of Jordan Reed. So Brock Bowers, just the number 1 receiver on this team. He really was, what's the word I'm looking for here? He really was like showing himself when Devontae Adams was hurt, and now clearly our number 1 wide receiver, or number 1 weapon. NFC West now, the Seahawks beat Atlanta 34-14, improved to 4-3, jump ahead on the top of this division. DK Metcalf caught a touchdown. He is a monster, but sprained his MCL in this game, listed as week to week. Hopefully he'll be back next week for Seattle, but something to look out for. The Cardinals improved to 2-4, beating beating the Chargers 17-15 Monday Night Football. Kyler Murray leads his 12th comeback in the fourth quarter of OT. Kyler has a 78% completion percentage in the red zone this season, which is the best in the NFL. And Kyler just had his 20th career game with a passing and a rushing touchdown. And they snapped a 6-game losing streak at home versus AFC opponents. The San Francisco 49ers, they're 3-4. I picked them to go 13-4 on the season. So if I'm going to be right there, they're going to have to win 10 games and lose none the rest of the year. Don't think that's going to happen. They lose to Kansas City 28-18. Brock Purdy goes 17 for 31, only 212 yards, 3 picks. Did have 27 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, but that's the second most picks he's ever had in a game in his career. Last year he had 4 against Baltimore. Debo in the hospital with pneumonia. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. McCaffrey's still out. This team is dealing with the injury bug heavily. A lot of stars on offense struggling to stay on the field. But man, Ricky Pearsall, though, makes his NFL debut. Ricky Pearsall makes the rookie sensation from Florida. I guess you can't say sensation now, but online sensation, was shot through the chest in an armed robbery attempt in San Francisco before he was able to make his NFL debut. Good to see him on the field. 3 receptions for 21 yards in his debut. And to round things up, the Rams sitting at 2-4, but they did beat my Raiders because the Raiders are horrible. Kyren Williams now tied for the 3rd longest streak since 2000 of consecutive games with scoring at least 1 rushing touchdown. LaDainian Tomlinson has the record with 18, then Jonathan Taylor, and then Kyren Williams with 9, tied with Priest Holmes, Zeke, and Sean Alexander. So, chance to keep that one going next week in Week 8. Tie Jonathan Taylor, and I guess 9 away from LaDainian Tomlinson. So, that's going to do it for the Week 7 recap here on the Valentine Sports Show. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. More football coming this week. We have also a World Series recap video coming up soon. Look for that one about Thursday. So, hopefully you enjoyed this one. More football coming after next week. This has been the Valentine Sports Show. I am Frank Rampin. Peace out.